I've been working this weekend on a set of skills and a supporting library for Claude or other AI agents to access GEDCOM genealogy databases. And the purpose of this video is to give an example of how one might use this. So I've set up in Claude Cowork here, and I've installed my plugin, and uh, I've got in my project my GEDCOM file that I've downloaded from, in this case, from Ancestry.com. And I've got a prompt here. What I'm going to say is I'm going to ask Claude to generate an ancestry report for Roberta Ann Houston for 10 generations. I know there's some bad data in here I wanted to be able to catch, so I need to tell about that too. I know there is a person in the ancestry with the last name Griffin who is listed as having two sets of parents where one is only a mother and the other is only a father. You should combine those two into a single family unit because that is just a data error in the file. All right, let's ask it to do that. So what it's going to do is it's going to load the tools that it has available. It's going to find the GEDCOM file that's in my project here. And see, it's going to run the search GEDCOM tool. If we look at one of the commands that's running here, you can see what it's doing. So it's searching GEDCOM. They're searching this for this person. Oh, it found them. And now it's looking for any family conflicts in the ancestry, particularly the Griffin person mentioned, and we'll see what it comes up with. It found the person. Jonathan Griffin has two family entries. So it'll combine those two in a single family unit. And now it's calling the ancestor report skill to generate the report. And that ancestor report skill is designed specifically to generate this report. Although the way that it came into being was that before I had that ancestor report skill, when I just had the GEDCOM search um, skills that I had written, I asked Claude to generate me this report, and so it did so. But when it did, it wrote a bunch of Python code to do that, and I thought, well, that's code that should be part of the skills. I went ahead and took that code that it had written and had it create a skill out of it and move that code in the library so it can be easier to use. And now instead of having to rewrite that stuff every time, it already has a skill for creating those reports. So now it's running that skill, and we can look. If we open this up, we can see what all it's doing. You can get an idea of the things it's doing. So it's looking for, it's searching for conflicts here. You can see down here it's um, again doing searches for particular individuals. You can see the output that we're getting from the tool. Okay, so it uh, so it decided in this case to actually fix the GEDCOM file, which is interesting because that's certainly one way to do it. And so it's done that. It's used the update GEDCOM skill to fix that family record in the GEDCOM file. I also the report generator will also allow you to uh, kind of set options that will collapse families together and things if necessary. Override the defaults, but that's okay. It fixed the file for me. It's even better. Did it fix the data? Now it's going to generate the report. So there's the report generated. So let's look at it here. So this is the report. It starts with direct ancestors, and it goes along and has birth and death, date, and places for all of the ancestors listed. In this case, I'm told to do 10 generations, so it's quite a long list, 123 ancestors. And generation 10 here, we've got folks in Germany. And then, in addition to that, I have it break out some particular groups of people that I think are interesting. So we've got a list of immigrants. They're sorted by their place of origin. These are folks who were born outside of the United States but died within the United States. And in this case, I've grouped them in a way that makes sense for kind of the migration patterns that the kind of large migration patterns that we saw in U.S. history, but the actual listing of how these groups are composed is completely configurable. So you can reconfigure this to if you want. But I have German and Scandinavian settlers put into a group. For me, these are folks who came in through Galveston, Texas, in the 1850s, and uh, migrated to Fredericksburg and settled Fredericksburg, Texas, and lived there until my grandmother left um, to go to San Antonio. So for a long time, this is my family. This part of my family was just in Fredericksburg, and so you can see this list. These are all the people who were part of that initial wave of immigration that I am related to. This person, Roberta Ann Houston, is my mother. So this is people that I'm related to as well. There's a lot of them, and then I've also got a set of Irish settlers. Now I happen to know um, because if you just look at these folks, Ulster, Tyrone, Antrim, these are Scots Irish, and I happen to know that these folks are uh, families that came from either the Scottish Lowlands or the north of England, moved into Ireland during the plantation of Ireland, and when the the King of England and Queen of England were um, forcing families to move in and forcing out the Irish in Northern Ireland, the Gaelic communities, replacing them with Protestant English speaking settlers, and so then those folks were there for maybe a generation or two before they then probably maybe like 100 years before they then migrated on to the United States. That's these folks are the Scotch Irish, but it has been Irish because I don't want to assume in general. I also have a settler, an ancestor who came directly from Scotland in this list as well. And I've got this other section, colonial ancestors. These are folks related to the U.S. War of Independence, our Declaration of Independence. So this shows people who were born in the colonies and lived their entire lives there and died before the American independence. In this case, there's nobody. On my dad's side, there are folks who fall in this category. And then we have folks who were born in the colonies before independence. So they're born in the colonies and they died in the U.S. But after independence. And then we've got the category early U.S. immigrants. These are folks who were born outside of the U.S. But died inside the U.S. in the time frame where they could have been here during the Revolutionary War, or maybe they came soon afterwards. And you notice in here, John Houston and Mary Ross. I'm going to go into them in more detail here in a minute. But this is the basic report. So this is cool. So now I'm gonna ask a more open-ended question to Claude. I'm gonna say, if you look at the list of early U.S. immigrants in the report, are there any people there who have any non-birth events that take place in the U.S. or the colonies before 1776 that might um, make us believe they were probably already in the colony before then. Another thing to look at would be uh, the actually I'm gonna leave it at that. And we'll see what it comes back with. So it's going to look at just those individuals that were in that last section. It's going to have to it's going to go and find their unique identifiers within the GEDCOM file, and then it's going to pull their data from the GEDCOM file and try to find any other events that are part of their record that take place in the U.S. before 1776, or in the colonies before 1776. And I happen to know, because I've already looked at this data, that John Houston and Mary Ross um, had a child. They were married in the U.S. after arriving, and had a child in the U.S. There's other folks in this list who are who also came after, I believe, but I can't remember which ones exactly. Give it just a minute. So yes, 3 of the 6 immigrants have strong evidence of being in the colonies before 1776. So John Houston has an explicit immigration event in 1750. A note also says, came from County Down, Ireland, with 3 sons and 2 daughters. He immigrated 26 years before independence. James McCracken has an explicit arrival event, arrived 1769 in Charleston. He arrived 7 years before independence at the age of 15, so he would have been a young adult during the Revolutionary War. Mary Ross has her own record. Uh, Her own record has no pre-1776 events, but the circumstantial evidence is strong. Her husband said that they came, and 2 of their children. Oh, I guess they weren't married in the U.S. They were married in Ireland. That's right. 2 of their children were explicitly born in South Carolina, and their son Ross Houston was born in 1764, which is before the Revolution. So they must have been in the colonies by at least 1764. The 3 others are likely genuine to have come after the Revolution. And then it says I can update the GEDCOM with explicit dates for Mary Ross and whatnot. But instead of that, I want to ask another question. I want to say, John Houston has an immigration date of 1750, but when was his son? What was his son's name? Let's see, where was it? Ross, born. In my first go through with this, Claude came back with a slightly different answer. It mentioned actually that Ross was born uh, out of line with that immigration date. So I want to see. So Ross was born in 1764. So see, here we go. So the immigration is 1750, but his other children's birthplaces suggest he was in Ireland well after that. His children weren't born until after 1750. And the note attached says he came with 3 sons and 2 daughters, and there are 3 sons and 2 daughters born in Ireland, with William, David, and Ross born in South Carolina. So the family pattern is consistent with John having immigrated after 1757. So this is the kind of interesting data. And again, it says, "Do you want me to update this? No. Do you want me to change the records?" So from here, we can really easily say, let's update John's immigration date to reflect this reality. So these are the kinds of things you can do with this. But of course, Claude is an excellent way to query data. So far, what we've been doing really is just querying the data. It's made a couple of inferences about things, but it hasn't really done much of its own uh, generation out of this. So we might say now we got this. So given all the ancestors of Roberta, what is the story of her family's um, immigration and life in the United States? That's immigration to and life in the United States. Given the location of her ancestors, what what inferences can we draw about the communities they were a part of? So let's see what it comes up with this. Because this is the kind of thing that where the LLM is actually interesting because it has knowledge that it has, you know, gleaned from the internet and other sources about those times and places and historical events that were happening, and it can look at the patterns. I, of course, have my own opinions on these things. I've obviously before Claude, I had already done lots of research into these groups. I know, you know, who they are and how they came to be in San Antonio. Um, but I want to see what Claude has to say about it. See, two completely separate immigration streams that didn't meet until her own parents married in the 20th century. Almost every one of her direct ancestors falls into one of two distinct waves of immigration. The Scotch-Irish wave, 1750 through 1770s, into the Carolina backcountry. On her father's side, virtually every line traces back to Ulster, or lowland Scotland. John Houston was born in Ulster, came to Charleston with his wife sometime between 1757 and 1764, brought three sons and two daughters with them from Ireland, and had three more children in South Carolina. James McCracken arrived from Galloway in 1769. The Simpson and Campbell families came out of Antrim around the same period, and the note attached to John Houston's record is explicit. Scotch-Irish of the same rigid Presbyterianism and immigrated from the same part of Ireland about the same time. This is the textbook Ulster Scots migration. Presbyterian families fleeing Anglican-dominated Ireland through Charleston and settling in South Carolina, and then pushing west into the Carolina backcountry, then over the mountains into Kentucky, and southwest into Alabama as the Indian lands cessions opened up. These were the same kind of places populated by the same kind of people: Presbyterian, clannish, agricultural, frontier facing. The Blackmans, the Griffins, and the Irwins, all in the same place in the Cotton Belt, Mississippi, following a parallel English-British colonial pattern, and end up as neighbors of the Houston descendants in Mississippi, Alabama, and eventually Arkansas. And by the time her great-grandfather James Pugh Houston was born, this whole network had been planted in the Cotton South for nearly a century. The other side is the German wave that came into the Texas Hill Country in the 1840s and 50s. And talks about that and how they even have one Dane with them, and that it's unusually concentrated because they came from a small handful of villages in the Duchy of Nassau at the beginning of the Hessen region. I'm sorry, in the surrounding Hessen region, and with others, they they migrated. They all died in Fredericksburg, Guthrie County. So they stayed there for a long time. I know for a fact that they all stayed in that area. The two streams converge in San Antonio. Roberta's father was the end of the Scots-Irish line, long drift westward, and her mother was a group in Johnson City, just east of Fredericksburg, the daughter of Hill Country Germans, who still had hardly mixed outside their immigrant community. The marriage is the moment the two most distinctive 19th century American immigrant communities, Scots-Irish Presbyterians of the Cotton South and Hill Country Germans in Central Texas, first ran together in Roberta's tree. It also points out the German Pennsylvanians. Moser, that's a good that's a good Pennsylvania Dutch name, which we see here, distinct from those other two. Yeah, Foster, Ogden, Anderson surnames suggest English colonial roots. Two final inferences worth flagging: the absence of Mexican, Tejano, or Spanish ancestry is striking, given that Roberta was born in San Antonio. It's true, and she is a part of two non-Hispanic immigrant streams that happen to meet on Hispanic ground. Second, the religious split is sharp. Her father's lineage is overwhelmingly Presbyterian Reformed, and her mother's overwhelmingly German Catholic and Lutheran, and they were all German Catholics. For most of American history, those communities lived in entirely different parts of the country and barely overlap. But the 20th century urbanization of Central Texas is what brought them together. See, this is an interesting narrative that it's generated. It's based on the data. So this is the kind of stuff you can do with these tools. You can find my plugin on my GitHub page. I've submitted it to Anthropic to post in their plugin directory, but I don't know if they actually will or not. But you can find it there. It's github.com/Valen slash uh, uh, GEDCOM skills, GEDCOM-skills. So take a look, and I hope you find it useful.